From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South. I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Venezuela is preparing for Sunday's municipal elections. The campaign period lasted 15 days, during which political organizations and candidates put forward their proposals. Sunday's vote marks election number 25 over the last 20 years. The mayor for the municipality of Libertador in Caracas encouraged voter participation for Sunday.
On Sunday, a new electoral process begins. All of the Venezuelan people will need to exercise their democratic right to vote. This is the election number 25 in 20 years of revolution. We extend the invitation to the Venezuelan people to vote at the same time that we are continuing the distribution process of food and basic necessity goods. We invite everyone to participate in this democratic process for our revolution.
President Nicolás Maduro was referring to a meeting of the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries. The meeting was held in Austria with non-OPEC producers and led by Russia. The OPEC president said that an agreement has been made to cut oil production by 1.2 million barrels per day for 6 months starting in January.
What's your expectation for today?
I hope we'll smile at the end. Still some negotiations.
Agreement or not? Yes, a long discussion.
I hope we'll have agreement.
Have you asked for exemption?
And President Nicolás Maduro has returned from his Russia trip. He remarked on the agreement signed with Russian President Vladimir Putin and spoke about the new OPEC agreement.
We have returned to Venezuela with good news of the agreement that has been reached in Vienna to maintain the strategic alliance between OPEC and non-OPEC countries. I want to thank Russia, President Vladimir Putin, Saudi Arabia, and all the OPEC and non-OPEC countries for the reduction of 1.2 million barrels per day. This will allow for the stabilization of oil prices. It's going to be a fair price for all producers and all consumers, and also fair for the world economy.
Venezuela will assume the presidency of OPEC from January 2019. The Venezuelan oil minister confirmed that the Venezuelan delegation is ready to take up the responsibilities of leadership. He added that Venezuela will present new strategies to stabilize the price of crude oil.
The cooperation between the OPEC and non-OPEC countries was an initiative of our President Nicolás Maduro. Now we are evaluating how to develop this cooperation. It's very important that the OPEC and non-OPEC countries work together as best they can to maintain the stability of fair prices. That's best for the social and economic development of the peoples of the world.
Political parties of the BRICS countries have been meeting in South Africa at the invitation of the African National Congress. Ayesha Ismail reports from Pretoria.
Delegates further acknowledged the supreme sacrifices made by freedom fighters and the international solidarity movement who supported the national liberation struggle for freedom and democracy. The conference was held in the context of re-emerging threats such as narrow ultra-nationalism, the offensive against the rules-based multilateral system, including the trade wars, regime changes, and imposed sanctions. The dialogue focused on inclusive economic development, peace and stability, multilateralism, and the fourth industrial revolution.
We engage in a dialogue which will actually change the world, because we don't believe, all of us agreed today, we don't believe in a unipolar world. We believe that in multilateralism, we believe that we need to address the challenges of unemployment amongst women and youth, generally across the globe.
But did the gathering of leaders achieve their objectives?
We are very confident that the world and the progressive forces in the world are moving in the right direction.
The BRICS political parties plus also supported the BRICS resolution, calling for the establishment of the BRICS ratings agency.
We said we are tired of being dictated to by the ratings agencies from the West, which in most cases manipulated to impose their agendas in our countries. And we're saying, let's have our own, which are going to assess us and ensure that they rate us on an objective assessment. But we can also be able to counter what comes from the other side, because it's largely manipulated information to suit the other agendas and causes us to succumb and subject ourselves in their interests.
Dlamini said the focus will now shift to the implementation of what had been agreed upon during the 10th BRICS Summit, as well as by the BRICS Political Parties Plus dialogue in Pretoria. Aisha Ismail, Telesur, Pretoria.
Germany's Christian Democratic Union has chosen a new leader to succeed Angela Merkel. Anne Gret Kramp was elected at the Paris conference in Hamburg. She will take over from Merkel, who has been at the helm of the CDU for nearly 2 decades. Merkel is leaving the party leadership with her popularity at an all-time low. Now to Palestine, where the Great March of Return protests resumed on the Gaza Strip. According to the Gaza Health Ministry, at least 17 Palestinians were injured by Israeli live ammunition, and at least 35 sustained suffocation from tear gas. Our Middle East correspondent Nayara Tardo sent us this report.
On Thursday, the United Nations rejected the United States resolution against the Islamic resistance movement Hamas for firing missiles in retaliation from the occupied Palestinian territories towards Israel. The U.S. drafted resolution obtained 87 votes in favor and 57 votes against, with 33 abstentions. China, Russia, and all Arab countries opposed the document, which was defended by the United States ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley. The United States attempted to blame Hamas for the launching of missiles, this despite the fact that Israel's frequent attacks on the Gaza Strip during the month of November have been some of the most severe since the war of 2014 in the border area. In this time period, more than 200 Palestinians have been killed, with the vast majority of them being killed during the Great March of Return protests held each Friday, a protest which is strongly repressed by Israeli forces. At the time of this report, Gaza's Ministry of Health has reported that during today's Great March of Return protests, at least 17 Palestinians have been injured as Israeli forces attempted to suppress the demonstration with all sorts of weaponry.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back. Now to Cuba, where many people have activated new mobile data plans. The service became available on the island on Thursday. Cuba's telecommunications company, FtS, is rolling out the service to mobile users over a 3-day period. Despite the barriers presented by the U.S. blockade, Cuba has concrete plans to expand technological access.
Sí, ya la estamos usando.
Yes, we're already using the service, and now we have to see how everything develops, and if there are any issues. So far, it's been great.
I believe it's a great thing for Cubans because now we have communication with the outside world, our family members, and also be better informed. It's a true benefit for all Cubans to have internet on our phones.
A recent report from the National Migration Institute has revealed that more than 90,000 Central American migrants remain in Mexico, and they're facing new round of challenges. The report shows that just over 5,000 from the first migrant caravan are living in hostels. This while some are residing in deplorable conditions. Close to 300 people from the second caravan are seeking refugee status. Human rights organizations have asked the authorities to ensure that migrants are not rendered homeless. Bad weather has been added to many problems that members of the Central American migrant caravan face on the Mexican border.
In the light of day, the hundreds of migrants staying in the camp in the north of Tijuana hope that the misery of cold nights and wintry rains will soon come to an end.
It's quite awful here. Imagine, we're here in our little tents, and the truth is that we're getting soaked, and the cold is numbing.
The local government closed the sports center which served the migrants since arriving at the city, leaving them without basic services.
It's really cold, and we are lacking a lot here. For example, water and clean toilets.
The Central Americans say that those who are most exposed to the effects of the winter weather are the youngest amongst them.
A cough, flu, fevers, but there are no medical services here.
Even with such difficulties, some don't lose their optimism. They say that they prefer to stay here so that they can process their local papers more easily.
The papers allow me to enroll in university, to get scholarships, and to work. That's why I'm putting up with it here, because I think that when I have work, I'm not going to be suffering.
In the border city of Tijuana, winter temperatures can go as low as 5 degrees centigrade. Resilience and determination are what the Central American migrants are showing here in the face of this frontier winter.
Pablo Pérez García, Telesur, México.
We continue with our special reports on the Cuban doctors who work in Brazil. We bring you the story of Dr. Berlices Labrada Guevara, who was in charge of 5 communities in the small town of Prado in the northeast of Brazil.
The village of Abril is one of the oldest in the Brazilian state of Bahia, and it was one of 5 communities that Cuban doctor Berlices Labrada Guevara served for over 2 years. During her time, she changed people's lives in more ways than one.
She decreased the amount of medicine we took and changed our eating habits. We no longer consume sugary soft drinks or buy processed food like we did before.
Now it's for these campesinos to say goodbye to Dr. Guevara.
She was really a person who was dedicated to help people, to cure the human. There are doctors who only think of money, who run clinics, but have no real commitment to serve people.
She didn't have patience. We were her friends. All of her patients are very sad that she is leaving. Some even got sick when they heard.
Now we arrive to the beautiful La Playa de la Pasión, another hard-to-reach community. It's home to people like Maria Elena, who has seen many doctors, but none of them were able to diagnose her symptoms. But that all changed when she saw Dr. Guevara, who identified that she had kidney problems.
I came to consult with her, and she prescribed me a medicine that would improve my condition. And now that I take it, thank God I don't have problems anymore. I took some medical tests and showed them to her, and she said I'm now healthy. She's the best doctor La Playa de la Pasión has ever had.
In a makeshift clinic on the beach, the Cuban doctor went to great lengths to apply all the medical knowledge she learned in her home country.
It was like having a private doctor. She provided very personalized consultations. That's the difference. She always paid special attention to her patients.
More than 8,500 Cuban doctors have left Brazil after the country's president-elect Jair Bolsonaro criticized the More Doctors program. But all these medical professionals will be certified for the work they've done.
I know it's over. The More Doctors program has ended for Cubans in Brazil. But our work here will be a part of history. What we did here will be in the history books, and we won't be forgotten.
Dr. Guevara bid a final heartfelt farewell to all the people that were more than just patients to her. She will now go back to Cuba to begin a new mission to help people in need.
Prosecutors in Brazil say leading global oil traders were deeply involved in a corruption scheme at the state oil company Petrobras. The prosecutors say they paid more than $30 million in bribes to employees between 2011 and 2014. They say the top executives of Vitol, Trafigura, and Glencore were fully aware of the bribes, which may be continuing. The Brazilian Federal Police have alerted Interpol. The union representing workers at Latin America's largest airline, LATAM, has announced plans to go on strike on Friday at midnight. This will be the second time LATAM workers have gone on strike this year. In April, cabin crew members of LAN Express, a subsidiary of LATAM, walked off the job, causing about 2,000 flight cancellations in Chile and across the region. The feminist movement in Argentina is protesting against the judicial decision to acquit 3 men accused of rape and murder of Lucia Perez. Let's find out more in this report.
Women around the country are outraged over the acquittal of 3 men who stand accused of the rape and murder of Lucia Perez. They were only convicted of possession and the sale of drugs. The judges decided that Lucia's death was not a femicide. They believed that there was no sexual abuse, that the sex was consensual with the defendant who drugged the victim with cocaine.
We have come to denounce the killing of Lucia, femicides, and the patriarchy which has once again failed us. The failure by the justice system has been condemned by various human rights organizations at a national and international level. The investigation was compromised. We are fighting violence against women, and we are here to fight this decision.
The judges decided that Lucia's death was not a femicide. They believed that there was no sexual abuse, that the sex was consensual with the defendant who supplied the victim with cocaine. Judges concluded that her death was caused by cardiac arrest.
During this year and the last 3 of Macri's government, women have died just for being women. These femicides against young women represent 25% of the total femicides this year. We say enough is enough, and say with all our being that we don't ever want another case like Lucia's, nor do we want to be mistreated for being women in Argentina.
One of the accused, Alejandro Maciel, was acquitted. Matias FtS and Pablo Afidani were sentenced to 8 years in prison and fined more than $3,000 for the crime of possessing drugs.
The court decision is misogynistic and goes against the interests of women and the young. Unfortunately, it's a common occurrence in court verdicts given across the country. But this case has come to symbolize women's struggle, and we will fight for justice.
Lucia Perez's family say they won't stop in their quest for justice with the help of human rights organizations and politicians.
We believe that immunity in the justice system has to end. We have to choose judges by popular vote. We have to be able to remove them, and there should be a popular jury as well. There has to be gender equality at all levels of the justice system, from the juries to the Supreme Court, because without it, we will be subject to a patriarchal, machismo, and xenophobic place that we have no control over.
Even the Organization of American States has criticized the decision and has urged the Supreme Court to take the necessary measures to ensure the young girl is served justice, to set a strong example against gender violence.
Argentine soldier to be repatriated since the end of the Malvinas War, Captain Luis Castañari, had been laid to rest. Captain Castañari's remains were buried in the central province of Córdoba with full military honors by the Argentine military. He was a member of an elite group which occupied the Malvinas Islands on April 2, 1982, during the war between the United Kingdom and Argentina. Jamaica's ban on plastic bags, straws, and styrofoam will take effect in just under a month. The government continues to encourage persons to be prepared by using cloth bags and other non-plastic containers. The ban is part of an international effort to reduce pollution.
The legislation is now with the Chief Parliamentary Council. We'll be using the Trade Act and the NRCA Act to enforce the measures. The advertising campaign will intensify in the coming weeks, as we have now gotten the commitment from the Ministry of Finance and through the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation for $40 million to be able to properly advertise and educate the public. We continue to have town hall meetings to make sure and try and sensitize community by community, and to indicate that there's quite a bit of support coming from private sector companies in terms of their offer to distribute bags.
We'll be back in a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back. The peace talks between the Yemeni government and Houthi fighters have entered to its second day in Sweden. A minister from Yemen's Saudi-backed government said a military offensive on the port city of Hodeida, held by Houthi fighters, is still an option if they refuse to withdraw from the city. These talks are being mediated by the United Nations. This is the first time in 2 years that the two sides meet in a long-standing conflict that has caused massive starvation in Yemen.
First, the release of detainees, those in custody and the disappeared, as well the prisoners, comprehensively. Second, Sana'a airport. Third, the delivery of humanitarian and to all Yemeni provinces. Fourth, the issue of Hodeida and the siege of Taiz.
In France, there has been widespread condemnation of the brutal force that the police used when arresting hundreds of students. They were protesting against the government's proposed educational reforms. The students were arrested in a Paris suburb during protests that have spread to dozens of schools during 3 weeks of anti-government demonstrations. A video of them being forced to kneel in rows has provoked outrage on social media. However, Interior Minister Christophe Castaner has defended police actions, describing it as necessary.
Over the course of several days, what we have observed is that the high school students involved in the strikes were joined by about 100 individuals with masks and sticks and flammable materials with the firm intention to come into conflict with the police. These are not student movements, but rather urban violence.
Most tourist sites across the country are closed on Saturday over fears of disruption due to the mass protests expected on that day. Prime Minister Edouard Philippe said that 89,000 police officers will be deployed on Saturday and warned residents to stay indoors.
Never since 2005, because we are facing people who are not here to protest, but to smash, and we want to have the means not to give them a free rein. We have mobilized a considerable amount of forces, 8,000 in Paris, which is much more than last Saturday, and in total for France, not 65,000, but 89,000. So it's truly an exceptional mobilization.
The European Commission has called on Switzerland to quickly decide to accept a draft treaty on future bilateral ties with the European Union. This after Switzerland ignored an ultimatum from its biggest trading partner, saying it will first consult its domestic power brokers. Switzerland risks facing EU sanctions over the integration deal. 2 attacks by the Allied Democratic Forces rebels in the Democratic Republic of Congo have killed at least 17 people. Sources say that 12 of the victims are civilians, while 5 are soldiers who died when the rebels attacked military barrack. The ADF militia was created in 1989 by Muslims to oppose Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni, who was seen as a hostile to Muslims. The arrest of the chief financial officer of the Chinese tech company Huawei in Canada has sent shockwaves around the world. Meng Wanzhou was taken into custody at the request of the United States and is set to appear in court for a bail hearing today. Meng is the daughter of the Huawei founder and faces possible extradition to the U.S. Her arrest threatens to escalate the ongoing trade dispute between the U.S. and China. A showdown is looming between Zimbabwe's ruling ZANU-PF youth lead and the party's war veterans over the latter's constitutional amendment proposal. It is seeking to raise the age limit for presidential candidates to 52 years. The youth league have called the proposal an assault on democracy and have vowed to oppose the amendment at the party's Congress in December. And with this, we come to the end of this news brief. This and many other stories you can find at our website at telestorenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telestory English, I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Thank you for watching.